What is intercultural leadership? In a world where almost any product or service includes elements from another country, few business people doubt the importance of intercultural skills. But many believe that intercultural leadership is essentially the answer to questions like, how should I conduct a meeting in Brazil? Or what are the secrets of leading successful teams in China? That is not what intercultural leadership is all about. But there is a reason why many managers make that mistake. Do a quick online search for intercultural business and you are likely to find theories and methods developed in the 1980s, 70s and before, when international business usually meant a small number of managers working in distant locations with entirely local teams. Preparing for those assignments required thorough understanding of the company's strategy and processes, and a limited set of cultural skills to be able to communicate with local colleagues, delegate jobs, and give feedback. Advice was limited to one foreign culture and took the form of do's and don'ts, like avoiding excessive eye contact in Southeast Asia, handing out business cards with both hands in China, phrasing negative feedback in a straightforward manner in Russia, but in a respectfully indirect way in Britain. Such guidance is what we call cross-cultural skills, and they are still useful for people who prepare to work in one specific country, especially on short-term assignments. But life and business has moved on since the heyday of cross-cultural leadership skills. International business transactions have intensified dramatically during the last decades. The value of international mergers has more than quadrupled since the mid-80s, and even those who never travel on business are digitally connected to distant countries. Consequently, few people today do business with one foreign culture. When someone starts dealing with foreigners, they are immediately exposed to networks that connect various locations and teams whose members are from several countries and traditions. Comparing two cultures is relatively easy, even though cross-cultural books and videos tend to oversimplify differences. You have probably come across the kind of comparisons where one culture is pictured as straightforward and the other indirect, and specific skills are advised accordingly. Don't say no directly in Japan. Use personal connections to find new clients in the Middle East, that sort of thing. But when a business leader deals with a supply chain or management team that includes 5 different nationalities, even simple comparisons, instructions and tips become practically impossible to keep in mind. People have done business across continents for millennia, and they started learning about one another's culture for one simple reason: to reduce the risk of unpredictability. As human beings, we love surprises, but hate it when we don't know what happens next. And since foreigners tend to react in unexpected ways, we don't trust them. Without exposure, most people assume that their own culture is normal and others are strange. Learning a bit about their bizarre ways, even if we don't agree with them, enables us to anticipate foreigners' behaviors and thus feel a bit safer. Most books and courses on cross-cultural business still reflect this mentality, and the majority does that from a European or American perspective. People with extensive international experience eventually realize something interesting: that their own culture is but one of the possible ways to behave. They start seeing different cultures not as reasonable straight lines and confusing squiggles on a two-dimensional surface, but as flight paths on a globe. Each one sees its own course as straight and the others as curved. That enables us to make an important differentiation that you probably noticed if you have met seasoned international managers. They stop thinking of alternative approaches as right and wrong, and look at which one is the best way to the firm's destination instead. Which culture is right is probably the most unproductive question to ask in a culturally diverse work environment. Rather than arguing about that, successful international managers learn to mentally model different ways of thinking, predicting how people from other cultures will behave and leading them accordingly. For that, they need a few key skills in their toolbox. First, They need reliable reference on the way cultures differ from one another. Some societies are tougher than others, but they also differ in terms of attention-seeking, patience, and reliability. Tools like the so-called culture maps help managers to compare multiple cultures and orient themselves in complex situations. Once they get their cultural bearing, they can adjust their management methods accordingly. Secondly, managers on international assignments must be aware that, according to research, only about a third of a country's population is a typical representative of the local culture. Therefore, the second essential skill is learning to observe individual personalities and consider them when people receive tasks, feedback, and evaluation. Fortunately, the system to compare individual work styles is the same as the one comparing cultures. Consider an example when a German company manufacturing some highly technical consumer product like vacuum cleaners, laptop computers, or cars plans to start manufacturing and selling in China and wants to prepare its managers for the culture shock. Now, ideally, they would start doing that before deployment, but in reality, companies usually contact me when the managers are already working in the foreign location. Once there, how to lead Chinese people is the wrong question. Managers at China branches of a European company must work with teams, suppliers and customers from a range of countries, industries and cultures. Their management team in China may include European, American and Asian managers, and their most important client could be a Japanese retail chain in China. That means that managers must adhere to different cultural standards while dealing with various aspects of their business. To beat competition, manufacturing must be fast and flexible, like it usually is in China. Quality must be good enough to satisfy Japanese standards, and human resources must be managed with German attentiveness. Managers must learn to adjust the style of documents, meetings, and processes, the ideal level of compliance, flexibility, and risk accordingly. They must also learn to recognize individual talents in their teams and delegate jobs to the most suitable people. That is a daunting task at first, but with the right skill set, it can become second nature over time. And that is how someone becomes an intercultural leader. It's a big undertaking, but so is the reward. Because as opposed to cross-cultural skills that are specific to a pair of locations, intercultural skills are transferable across countries, regions, industries, and many other forms of human culture. You will find advice on specific situations in my blog posts, speeches, and videos on intercultural leadership. If you want to get more serious and find out about consulting, coaching, and training options, find me online and drop me a line.